How do you know which hadiths are fake? Because let's be real, some of them are. I asked myself this simple question. Would our prophet really have said that? For example, looking at this one. The woman spends the night away from the bed of her husband and he sleeps angry with her. The angels curse her until the morning. Ugh, there are so many things wrong with this hadith. First of all, angels exist to protect you or record your deeds, not to curse you.
So the 21st century yardstick for hadith authentication has now become, would the Prophet ﷺ really have said that? How does this hadith make me personally feel? Forget the likes of Imam Bukhari, who travelled the world to authenticate and collect hadith. Forget the fact that he had such a strict criteria in authenticating reports that one time it is reported that he refused to take a narration from a man who tricked his horse. He pretended to hold food in his hand to lure the horse in his direction. And Imam Bukhari rahimahullah saw that as a type of deception, so he rejected the narration from that man. Let's forget the likes of Jabir bin Abdullah, who heard that there was a man all the way in Asham who had a narration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just one. So he brought a camel and put a saddle on it and travelled for a whole month just to go and collect that narration. Let's just forget about 1400 years of hadith scholarship and all the different sciences attributed to it and all the scholars that spend their whole lives learning it. Instead, we're going to resort to relying on the personal feelings of 21st century liberals. Now, I'm not speaking specifically about this lady here, but I'm talking about the general trend that we see of putting personal feelings before the text. If a hadith coincides with my personal feelings and makes me feel all warm and mushy inside, then I'm going to accept it. Otherwise, I'm going to reject it, and that's going to be my criteria. Will you now reject all of the narrations relating to the hellfire and its description because it makes you feel uncomfortable inside and it forces you to live a life of abstinence from haram? By extension, would you apply this to the teachings of the Quran, which speak about obedience of wives to their husbands? By adopting this methodology of putting whims and desires before the text, everybody's going to have their own personal tailor-made Islam. And it's important to understand that what makes one person feel nice, warm and mushy inside will be vastly different to what makes another person feel warm and mushy and nice inside, which differs from one person to the next. These kind of silly emotional arguments are a psyop deliberately designed to undermine 1400 years of hadith scholarship. In fact, these kind of ideas open up the doors to rejected hadith altogether, which then opens up the doors to misinterpreting the Quran. We need the hadith to fully understand the Quran, how to pray, how to make wudu, how to make hajj. Without hadith, we're going to be acting like donkeys doing our own things, like cattle astray. It is much better for one to admit that they are limited in their understanding of hadith, rather than putting their own personal feelings and their emotions on this deluded perfection that the Quran and the Sunnah need to follow. Because in reality, it should be the other way around. We put our own personal preferences, our emotions and our feelings to the side, and we follow the Quran and the Sunnah. And this is the definition of being a Muslim, the one who submits his will to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why the da'wah will always be to follow the Quran and the Sunnah and the companions and the early generations of Muslims and the scholars that followed this tradition for 1400 years. As the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the best generation is my generation, then the next generation, and then the next generation. And these are the people whose understanding of Islam we should adopt, not of some 21st century liberals, because ultimately there's safety and success in that alone, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.